use every day or almost every day. So this is our front door where the children go in, but actually this year we separated them out so that the different layers go in different doors. So the upper elementary door is right there, then my lower elementary door is someplace else. Our school was originally a retreat house run by the Sisters of Mercy, and so we have a unique building. So first I would just want to share right out the front door when we have car line, the Wi-Fi works. And so sometimes when I have my remote students with me, I'll just come out here for read aloud or a lesson. So it's just benches, nothing fancy, but it gets us in the fresh air and it keeps my remote students with me. We're teaching 5 days a week. All of our students, except the ones who chose to go full remote, and then if children have to quarantine. Now I'm walking across the parking lot. Right outside the front door, there's a big hill. You would think, it's boring, but here it is. That hill is so useful. So what we decided this summer is that the younger students would stay closer to the building. If they got a bee sting, or I have to go to the bathroom, or whatever, they need to be close to the building. And so what we do out here is just eat lunch, have silent reading, do works. In the summer, I went to Target, bought a bunch of towels. The children, we also asked them to bring a towel. So they just sit on towels, spread their work out, do it right there. If they have a need, we just use our walkie-talkies, call someone inside, or we give them, since I teach first, second, and third, I can give a big kid, walk this little one inside and bring them back out when they're ready. So we use that all the time. I try to eat outside. I'm trying to help my kids. Most of our kids are fresh air kids, go camping, that kind of stuff, but some of them don't get outside, and so they are very afraid of bugs, and they are just really timid. So I'm slowly trying to help them get used to the idea that bugs live outside and it's okay and you're gonna be all right. So the other thing that we ensured that everybody did this year is have outside clothes. So you can see I'm walking on a balcony now, and on this balcony, I don't know if you can see that, we have little boots so that we go outside all the time. I want to show you one unique thing about Mercy Montessori, and that is, since it was a retreat house, we have a unique view of the Ohio River. I don't know if you can see that, but beyond our fence, we have a beautiful view of the Great Ohio. But right here with these leaves, that's a tent. I'll take you down there, and we assign tents, but we share them so that that's a tent for the preschool and kindergarten. I'm just going to show you over the railing now our playground. I'll take you down there because underneath that is the Eco Lab, where we have, our experience of nature. Mercy is about just a couple miles from downtown Cincinnati, and we're landlocked. It's not like we have a big suburban campus. We do have a unique opportunity because we have the Sisters of Mercy living up on the hill, where Krista will show you in a few minutes. So we can add spaces up there with the parking lot and kind of around where the nuns live. So here we are on the balcony. I'm going to turn around so you can see we have picnic tables, and we have another tent over there. I've come out here a fair amount. In Montessori, we teach, the origin of the universe, the coming of life. So I've come out here and I sit the children spaced out, but they can take their masks off outside as long as they're far enough apart. And then I sit right here on this picnic table, and my Wi-Fi works, which is important for my remote students. And then I teach to the kids right here. So they love that. Then sometimes we use underneath this tent if they need to get out of the rain. We told them, since we're not moving around the building, we're not using our dining room, we're not going to specials. I'm going down the steps now. So we have got to get them outside or their little bodies are stuck in one spot for 6 hours. So we told them unless there's thunder, we're outside. So far, so good. We'll see about that tomorrow when it's really raining. Okay, so here I am down on the playground. I just want to show you where I do partner reading and silent reading almost every day at 2:30. I bring the kids outside with their books. They've gotten used to it. I make them run around the play set 3 times, and then I give them 30 seconds, find a place to settle down and read. They love it. And then at the very end, I say, okay, children, put your books on the bench and run and play for the last 10 minutes. And they just are so happy. It's a great way to end the day. I just want to brag here for a sec. Here's a bench that we made out of plastic bags. No. The lids of plastic, bottles. Can you imagine all the lids of plastic bottles that went in there? But we collected trash bags and trash bags full. Okay, now I'm heading down into the Eco Lab. This is where the wee little ones who are 3s and 4s, they have their Montessori down here. But we come down for recess, we come down. This is where we do our plant studies. So I'm just gonna stand at the top and show it to you for a minute. It's really not lovely looking today, but usually it's really beautiful. And when the leaves were falling, they fell right on the kids. So it has paths, and it has trees that have been cut down and cut into like strips, and the kids build with them. So we do observations down here. We do, all kinds of, our botany lessons go straight from the parts of the seed all the way through everything. So you can do all of that in the Eco Lab. And let me see, what else should I tell you? For COVID, of course, we divided our children into pods. And so this playground we have 3 different pods. So one pod is down in the Eco Lab, one pod is out in the play set, and one pod is over here, and then we switch. So Krista, I'm ready for you now. Oh, I should show you our bird blind. Here it is. But we always scare them away with all the fun yelling on the playground. Okay, Darcy, I'm finished.
All right, Noreen, thank you. I'm Krista Taylor. I'm assistant principal here at Mercy Montessori. And as Noreen mentioned, we have our students divided into instructional pods or cohorts. All of them are 16 students or fewer, with our smallest cohorts being about 8 students. And they are together all day in the same space due to COVID protocols and to assist us with contact tracing and all of those fun things. So getting outside became even more important this year than it has been in the past. We're incredibly blessed here at Mercy Montessori, as Noreen said, and as she showed you a bit of. We have an amazing campus, just a beautiful green space here, very close to downtown Cincinnati. So we're really lucky to have that, and it's really been implemented kind of to the max as far as I can tell this school year. I'm right now up in what we call our Montessori space, so that's kind of a play on words of farm and Montessori. And so we have a Montessori curriculum, which is both focused on sustainability as well as farming, growing produce. We also have chickens. If I walk over here, they might come over and let me introduce you to them. So our students actually, let's see, chickens, there we go. Our students were able to select, our junior high students, what breeds of chickens they wanted, and they ordered the eggs and hatched them, and they're raising the chickens, and they do sell the eggs to our community, as well as some of the produce. Our garden beds here, getting ready for winter, but still producing a bit here in Cincinnati. We're relatively temperate. And we have a greenhouse as well that also has produce in it. So our students harvest all of that and donate some and sell some, and then they're able to utilize a business model to turn their profits back into their business, understand the idea of supply and demand, what's a valuable investment, what's a losing money investment, And then if they have profit at the end of the year that they don't need to continue the business, they donate that, and they research places they want to donate that profit. So that's what we call our junior high microeconomy, and a microeconomy is a fundamental part of a secondary Montessori program. We're super lucky to have it very evolved here. Prior to COVID, our junior high students have a business with 4 parts. They sell smoothies, so they have to get a safe food handling certificate. All of our junior high students go through that program and earn that certificate. And then they have a smoothie business both during lunchtime and for Carline, because our parents like our smoothies too. We have bees, so we have a couple of apiaries, and they harvest honey. We've had some struggles with keeping bees in our hive. We've had them swarm twice and leave us, but they have done some honey harvesting and have been able to sell that. And that's all been quite an investigative process on raising bees and the challenges that they face, especially in today's natural habitat world where we're destroying our bees rapidly. They also have the farm stand that I talked about, which includes the produce and the eggs, and they have a tea business. So some of the what's being grown in the garden beds here behind me is mint or lemon balm or lavender, and from all of that they dry the herbs and turn them into tea bags and fill the tea bags. They make their own boxes, and then they both sell cups of tea and boxes of tea. A little promo plug, it's really good tea. Became a stocking stuffer in my family last year. So that's our Pharmasory. It really is remarkable. Our Pharmasory teacher instructs our students from pre-K to grade 8. The microeconomy is focused at 7 and 8, but the sustainability and earth-centered curriculum goes through all of the levels and has a 3-year cycle with different themes each year, and the whole school follows those themes. Sorry, that's my walkie-talkie. I'm gonna go out the farm gate here and show you where we have another tent. Noreen showed you a couple of tents that were behind our building. This is one that's on the other side of our campus. For some of our older students, as Noreen shared, we keep our younger students closer to the building, and our older students are able to walk farther for some of their lessons. We do not have Wi-Fi up here, and we're working on getting hotspots because that's a definite need, but we don't have those yet. But I'm going to show you right behind me here. You can see there is one of our tents, and we have stools set up in there so that lessons can happen. I know that we have teachers come up here and use it for seminar discussions, as well as community meetings, things like that. And you can see behind me these large houses. Those are the sisters' residences, and they graciously share their land with us. So here's that tent again. You can see that a little more closely. So the tents are new this school year when we recognize that we felt strongly about being able to reopen, but also to be able to reopen safely. We did a lot of research on education amidst COVID, and quite frankly, everyone was kind of shooting in the dark isn't the right thing to say, because there was some information out there, but not quite a lot. But one of the things we rapidly recognized is that outside is safer and masking is safer. So we are all masked in the building at all times with the exception of lunch. And getting outside allows our students to have mask breaks in a way that we feel much more comfortable with than having them do that in the classroom. It's especially important for our teachers of our youngest students when they are teaching lessons that involve phonics or something that needs to be able to see the mouth. We encourage them to do those lessons outside for safety, because those would need to be mask off lessons or with a face shield. I think that's about all that I have for our outdoor areas on our campus. I don't know if there's any questions, Darcy, or if you're ready to move on to your next school.
I'd love to take a few minutes for people to ask questions. There's so much good information in what you just said. Does anyone have any questions to start?
Darcy, I just want to say one thing. The trick is to make it easy for your kids to get outside. Don't be fancy. Just make sure they get some fresh air every day.
And I would say you also need to make it easy for your teachers to get outside, because if it's too hard, they're not going to do it. It's one of the reasons we have the stools and things up in our tents already, so teachers and students don't have to bring out seating. It's already up here.
Well, other people feel free to chime in with questions. I'm kind of curious about what it was like getting families on board with the outside time. How did that go?
It went over really well. I think as a Montessori school, many of our families are invested in the natural world already, but it also affirmed for them that we were doing everything we could to reopen safely.
So it actually, in some ways, was a benefit because it reassured.
Absolutely. It created a feeling of we're looking at everything and we're putting everything in place.
We also have a question, whether are your remote students always remote, or are you hybrid doing alternate days?
We're not hybrid. We have about 266 students enrolled. We had 18 begin the year with us fully remote by family choice. About 4 of them have returned. So we now have 14 fully remote approximately, and the remainder are in person 5 days.
And of course, what is the plan for winter?
Saw that. So it is true that in winter, we are not going to get out that much. We are fortunate that it's not terrifically cold here in Cincinnati in the winter, but it's not warm either. So one of the things we've asked all of our families to do is send in some outerwear that we're storing in the classrooms. It's not going to get us through the coldest days, but it will help us be outside more in some of the more moderate days.
So maybe you'll be doing less instruction time outside, but more just getting those mask breaks in.
I would imagine so. Vandalization, I see that question, and I don't know how much more life I have here in my phone, so I'll try to talk fast. We don't have a tremendous issue with that. We do have some security on the grounds, including video recording. We've had some graffiti at times, but very, very rarely. We're kind of off the beaten path, even though we're really close to the downtown area, so we're lucky that way.
There's also the question, have you discovered anything that you plan to keep doing after the COVID risk has subsided?
I think the outdoor learning spaces are really popular. I don't anticipate that that will end with COVID. Once we've invested the money into the tents and into our hotspots, I expect those will remain places for instruction, especially during the fall and spring.
And you mentioned a few times just making it easy for teachers and students to go outside, not making it complicated. You mentioned like putting chairs out and having the boots ready to go. Are there any other things you found that decreased?
Yeah, so for our tents, we've assigned them by grade level. So it isn't the whole school having to communicate with each other for who's using what. It's just on team that they have to figure that out. And then our receptionist as well maintains a schedule. So if a teacher wants to know if a space is available, they have a single person to go to. And I should give a shout out to some of our parents. We had some parents on our MMPA, or our parent teacher organization, really work hard on getting our outdoor spaces set up and really advocate strongly for that.
I can add to that, Krista. I would say as a teacher, having stuff that's easy for the children to carry and manage. And early in the year, I tried the children just brought whatever work they wanted to do. And one child was doing a cutting work and it kept blowing away. So that was a lesson, you know, make it easy for the kids, but reading works super well. Teaching reading works super well too.
So that's us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. It's so great to see how it was such a thorough integration. It's really inspiring.
Thanks, Darcy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know our next presenter is Lauren Metcalf from Vinton South Elementary, and she is still getting outside after dropping her students off at their specials. So you might have a few moments before she gets on. But just to introduce her, Lauren is a 4th grade teacher at a rural elementary school here in Southeast Ohio, and she, I think, is a really great example of what you can do in a very conventional elementary school setting, even just as an individual teacher. And she, I'm not sure if she's teaching math this year, but she has been primarily a math teacher, so also showing how much the outdoors can be used even when you're not a science teacher. So hopefully she'll be on in a minute. But if anyone has any other questions to throw out there or stories from their own experiences, it would be great to hear them.
Bye, Darcy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Noreen. Have a good day. Really appreciate it.
I just wanted to say, this is John. I just wanted to say I'm kind of an interloper from down in Tennessee in the Smokies, and I work at a residential environmental ed program here, but I'm also working with my son's school. So strange, like all of our schools around here in East Tennessee, they're all in person, and none of them are that interested in going outside. It's really frustrating. I've been trying to work with some teachers to see if they will, so I'm just trying to get ideas and ways to help make it easy for teachers and make the point that it can be done safely and without too much hassle in it. So I'm just here trying to get good ideas to bring to them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, John. We're glad you're here. I imagine it is different when you are not part of the staff at the school and trying to make that case. Does anyone have any experiences with that kind of back and forth? It sounds like parents were really important to it being possible, even at Mercy, where there was that staff support.
And I think parents would actually be okay with it for the most part, but I just haven't gotten to the point of trying to rally some parents around it. But the teachers are definitely not that excited about the idea. And strangely not very worried. Like, strangely, none of the schools around here are making any effort to get outside. It's all inside, in person, and most of the students are involved. Not surprisingly, we're having a lot of case transmissions in Tennessee right now, but anyway.
Yeah, Susan, I agree. Susan just put in the chat that her hope is that the pandemic will help other teachers realize how easy it is to get outside. But I think it is challenging to figure out how to convey that it's not something extra, because teachers are so stressed right now, but something that could make life a little easier, hopefully.
Darcy, this is Kathy. One thing I had talked to John, one thing I had some success with was when I had a junior naturalist program with my 5th through 6th grade kids. They would work on activities that could be used, and we used it as a peer teaching opportunity. And they would go do some of the things in the classroom, or even take the kids out for an activity. And I started getting the reaction was, well, that wasn't so, I could probably do some things like that. What else could I do with the kids? So it let them see that it's not that hard to do. It kind of helped the teachers experience it a little bit without the first time or two, without having to come up with everything on their own. That helped us a lot. And the kids loved the peer teaching. It always reinforced what they'd been learning in lessons. So that was something that worked for me when I was doing it. That was way back when land labs were not really something you did. So yeah, just a thought.
So you did that, you contacted teachers and did that with them? Is that what you mean by peer teaching? You kind of did it together?
I would teach some concepts in my science classes, because I had all the 5th and 6th grade science. But then I had an after-school program called Junior Naturalist, and those people, those kids loved doing things. And so one of the things they would do is try to figure out ways they could teach some of the concepts in a simpler form to, say, 2nd graders or 3rd graders. And then we would offer that to the teachers. Our teachers liked having their past students come to the classroom or do something with the kids outside. And it kind of gave them a relationship with the older kids. But the younger kids loved it, and they really tuned in. And I felt like the older students learned more because they had to figure out a way to instruct. And so they had to really know what they were talking about. So it was a double benefit there, and something that worked really well. And we did it quite often. I know Colleen's from a school, I see her on here, and I know that some of them have also done things. So yeah, that was good.
So it's actually the older students who were modeling the kind of outdoor activities that made teachers
Right,
realize that was
right. Yeah, and it did help us let the other kids feel more let other teachers feel more comfortable when they saw the simple activities and how much the kids learn from them.
And Susan is bringing out that wet and muddy feet are really a sticking point for a lot of people. So the extra shoes and boots, and where do you keep them?
I thought their presentation was great. It was really interesting to see everything they were doing. Thanks for setting that.
Yeah, and I have always noticed that when we visit schools, making sure to clean up after kids coming inside and befriending the janitors can be key to our success as well. Okay, I see that Lauren is here. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. I gave a little background on you, so you can go ahead and introduce yourself and share.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I teach 4th grade in Vinton County, which if anyone needs a geography lesson on that, we're in the southeastern part of the state. And we have just a lot of leeway from our principal to go outside. And we created a very small garden. Building on what Darcy said, I wanted to build trust with the groundskeepers and the janitors and make sure that they knew that this garden wouldn't become an issue or an eyesore. And I've actually had really good feedback from our janitor. He says, you guys should make that bigger. You should be growing pumpkins and you should be doing this and doing that. And he helped us put up our Monarch Way Station sign, in fact. So we've gotten really good response from our principal, the janitor, and the community. The kids love it. So I'm gonna go out and show you our space. It's a little bit rainy. Let me grab my keys. Oh, they're over on my desk, sorry. Yeah, so what, Darcy, could you bring me up to speed on, like, what are you hoping that I can show in this short time?
Sure. I think just getting an idea of the space and how you use it and what makes it easy.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked a lot about obstacles to getting other teachers on board or just getting started yourself. So what makes it easy and smooth?
Yeah. Like I've invited other teachers to other ones have not really used it, except when we had our butterflies there this year. And I hope I don't lose internet connection, but if I break up, that's why. We have a butterfly box, and there was a kid from another class who was super interested in the chrysalises. So every time he walked past the garden on his way to recess, he
We are,
but
you are breaking up a lot,
it's
Lauren. So I wonder if maybe it would be better to go closer to the school.
What was that?
You are breaking up a fair bit. I wonder if it'd be better to go closer back to the school, unfortunately, so we can hear you better.
What was that?
Just that you are breaking up. So you can see the space just a little bit behind Lauren. She's frozen there, but it is although there's some nice open fields behind them, most of the school property I visited is kind of that typical lawn space, except for the garden that Lauren has put in there. So she has that outdoor space, but it is pretty simple aside from those gardens. Thanks for your patience through. All right, it looks like you're moving again, Lauren, so maybe we can hear you.
I'm so sorry. Okay, I may not be able to get very close to the garden, but I hope you can kind of see it in the background there. It's small. It's about 6 feet wide by maybe 18 feet long. We've got a compost bin, which kids empty the compost as part of their daily jobs at the end of the day. We've got some tall posts for hanging bird feeders on when it's bird feeding season. We have a bluebird box we take up and put down, and we've had bluebirds being monitored, a nest being monitored in there. And the little blue box, can you see the little blue cage? Try to get closer.
Now we can see it, yeah.
And just helped us, helped me make a small enclosure to rear monarchs outdoors in the correct weather conditions. And then we have a small raised bed where we grow radishes. They do well at the beginning of the year. We get a crop, we talk about, the parts of the plant, and they get to have a treat. We make these things called rackers, which is a slice of radish, a little bit of cream cheese, and a sprinkle of dill on a wheat thin cracker. And it's delicious. The kids love it. And we have a sunflower growing in there, so we'll get to see the birds starting to eat the sunflowers. So it's a tiny little space, but there's a lot going on. Does anybody have any questions?
What grade levels are you working with?
4th grade.
Susan says, no questions, but I love it. It is really amazing how in just that one area around the raised bed, you have so much going on. The gardening and the plants and the butterflies, the decomposition with the compost, the birds feeding and nesting, that it's really efficient.
Yeah, it is. And I really do think we could expand soon. We have 3 kinds of milkweed growing in that garden, and then several other native species. We have a stiff goldenrod, New England aster, so really good pollinator. You guys just moved just missed the last couple blooms. It was pretty much blooming up until now. And we tried to raise monarchs in the most natural way possible. And it was neat because the kids really got to actually see some predation. We saw a spider eating one of their caterpillars one day. So we got to talk about, the balance in the ecosystem. And the kids all love spiders now. At first they wanted to kill them, and now they protect them. And they know how to put a cup over them and move them out of the room. Now that it's winter, I don't know if you noticed, all these bugs are coming into our building. And so the kids have gotten really good at moving them, and they know that there's a safe place for the bugs in the garden.
Are there any routines or practices that you have to do with the kids to get them used to working outside?
I could probably be better at that. But luckily I have a small group. And so I just say that, when we go out to the garden the first time, you're going to stand around the garden, but your feet are going to be in the grass. And, you're going to kneel down and look closely at your section of the garden. And then I let them move around freely. And with COVID, that's been an extra challenge. They have to have their masks on. I could go into more about COVID, but if you want me to, I will, but hopefully it's, not something we'll have to deal with for the rest of our careers. like with the masks and that challenge. I also, one thing I did is I bought each of my kids a blanket. There's just these simple little Turkish towel blankets. And when the weather was a lot nicer, they would lay down their blankets around the garden and they would do some journaling and observations. That was really good to get them going with descriptive writing earlier in the year. We also did a small map of the garden, and I taught them some of the plants. And then they drew a map of other things around the garden and identified the plants and put it on their map. That was an introduction for our map unit for social studies. As far as other routines, I think, so you guys all know about the wildlife or Division of Wildlife Wild Schools grant that's available.
People might not be familiar. I'll find a link and drop it in the chat.
Okay, it's really easy to apply for it, especially if you've taken part in any of the Project Wild or Project Learning certifications. I think that priority goes to people who have completed those certifications. But you can apply for a $500 a year grant and purchase items to help you with your wild school sites. So I'm thinking about purchasing a set of rubber boots because I would like to go out in more all weather, not just to our garden, but to some other areas in our schoolyard, which I really believe in starting small and, getting a handle on something before expanding too big. But we do have some other areas of the school that I'd like the kids to be able to explore more. And I think using the grant money, I think I'll be purchasing some boots for that, because it's like kids are never going to remember all to bring boots on the same day, and you never know when it's going to rain and stuff. And I love it, that rural action. They used to come to my school a lot. And when I taught 7th grade, we had kind of a wetland that we would explore with the kids. And your guys' bucket of boots was like a lifesaver.
Yes, if there is anyone who is in the Southeast Ohio region and we can visit your school, we are, of course, happy to do that. That's our bread and butter. And with grants too, the Ohio EPA also yesterday presented, and they have grants for teachers up to $5,000 for environmental education projects. Did you have a question, John?
Yes. So Lauren, I was curious if you do all of this, what you do, if that all happens during class period or some of it happens after school, and if it's during the class period, do you fit it all in a class period, or do you have flexibility with time and blocking time for a longer class period, or just how the timing and logistics work out there?
Yeah, so up until this year, I only taught math, and I had 3 different sections per day, and they were an hour and a half long. So we did do some things in the garden, but actually I used the garden more with an after school club, because it was, there was only so much I could do with, I'm sure I didn't reach the levels of creativity I could have with math in the garden, but I didn't use it as much during the day. I used it more after school. We had a quote unquote garden club, and we grew the radishes and we raised the monarchs and we did stuff like that. And now that COVID happened, I'm teaching a self-contained. So I do have flexibility. I have the same kids all day long. They leave my room for lunch, recess, and specials. But other than that, we've used the garden much more as a class, and also because I can tie it into writing and social studies mapping, and I get to teach science now. So a lot. It's wonderful. What is your situation?
I'm down in Tennessee, and I'm not a teacher. I'm an education director at a local environmental education center, trying to work with local schools to do more outside teaching. And there's just a lot of resistance and not much interest in it. But I know one of the big challenges is just the timing of a class period, a 55-minute class period. And it's almost impossible for some schools to even get outside, in that time frame. So I'm just trying to hear other creative ways to get around that, or that sounds like the after school, you know, that gives you the flexibility and the self-selected group of kids and all that. That's probably, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I know that several schools in our area have nature clubs after school. In my work as a naturalist, I used to visit schools and do after school clubs. Yeah. But one thing you can do is you can encourage parent or teachers to set up a bird feeding station if they have a good location. I tried to do that outside my library last year though, and there were no small trees nearby for cover. And so no birds ever visited because they're not stupid. So like, I have not been able to find a good location. I would really like I dream about this stuff. Like if I could move to the classroom across and up the hall, out the window out there, it's not only south facing, so I could have plants in my window, but it's also in this little kind of like nook of the school yard. And I would love it if they would let me plant some shrubs and trees and we could have a bird feeding station out there and a small garden out there. So yeah, location, like if you can have if you are lucky enough to have just the right spot right outside your classroom, and maybe you'll find a teacher who has that. But yeah, like we have this shelter house where we're supposed to be able to take the kids to sit on picnic tables and do outdoor class, but it seriously takes 20 minutes to walk there. So it doesn't get used.
Right, and that's exactly what this school is trying to build. They're trying to build this thing, but I'm afraid they're going to build it and nobody's going to, because they don't go outside anyway. And they think that that's going to help them. Maybe it will, but I'm just worried they're going to spend a lot of money and have another thing that's not being used.
It could be. Yeah, location is so important.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I think we could probably chat with you for a really long time, but Cheryl is here from Red Oak Community School, so I'm going to turn it over to her to see, and if you can stay, that's great, and if you have to go teach, of course. See you later.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I kind of jumped in late. We've had all kinds of crazy logistics, so I just ducked in. Let me turn off my walkie. Ducked into a bit of a storage room to to do this. So I'm surrounded by chairs and who knows what else. So yeah, I work for Red Oak Community School. I'm the school manager here. We're K through 5. This is our 5th operating year. We're a small school. We have about 70 students, but we have part-time options. So we have about maybe 50 on any given day. We spend at least 2 hours a day outside every day. We start our day outside, which that's the easiest thing, I think, the easiest time frame to be able to get outside is just to start there. Excuse me. And we play for the first hour all the way K through 5. We find it more important as they get older to have that time, not less important, because there's all of the social emotional learning, and that's the really hard stuff to teach. You know, all the academics are pretty straightforward. Excuse me. But we've been doing that for 4 years. So this year we're just trying to be all outside as much as we can, as long as we can, until we have to come inside. But our play times will still be outside. So what I did was I put together some pictures that I took yesterday. And granted, the weather is gloomy and gray and kind of miserable, but maybe that's a good example, right? Because it's not always sunny weather. The beginning of the year, it's always very nice and bucolic, and then the leaves start to fall and everybody is so happy. And then it turns to gray, wet, muggy kind of, you know, winter. But we still do it. And I know that there are things that make it really difficult for larger schools to get outside. But we've managed to do it. Our staff is pretty flexible. We don't have any naturalists on our staff. They're just regular teachers is what I usually call them, because sometimes people wonder if our school just hires parents to teach kids. And yes, they are parents, but they are trained teachers. So they are, our staff has come from a traditional background and was willing and flexible enough to pick up their curriculum and put it outside. So that makes us a little bit unique, I think, in that way, in that they have over the course of time, developed environmental education certifications and things like that, but that's not where they started. So I think what I'll do is just sort of show you the spaces in the pictures and talk a little bit about the logistics of the day. I'm the school manager, I'm not a teacher, so I can't exactly speak to the way that they've altered their curriculum, but I can give you an idea from an administrative point of view what we have done. So let's see if I'm able to share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see that? Yeah, okay, thank you for the thumbs up. Okay, all right, so we are an urban nature school also. So we are in the middle of downtown Columbus. So we are surrounded by parking lots, and one of the main streets of the city is where we are located. So we have a lot of kind of funny urban things that we have to deal with that maybe you guys don't, but because of COVID, we decided to move our classrooms outside. And so you can see the cars parked in a line here to basically block off part of the parking lot because they wouldn't let us put up more permanent planters or anything else, because if someone needed to access part of the building, we had to be able to move it. And we were like, okay, we'll just use our staff cars then. So this is where we park to block off the kids. And, oh, I think I need to move this so I can access my little arrow. Okay, so this is our front door. We prop it open with a rock so that nobody has to touch it this year because of COVID. So the kids come in, they head in. This year we do, washing hands, temp checks and things like that. But normally you can kind of see where their gear is inside the door there. Normally this is where they'll come in the morning and they'll gear up. We have every year before school starts, or right at the beginning of school, we do a little bit of a donations drive for extra gear because not everybody can afford all the gear. And we require kids to have rain gear, snow gear, like all the gear, right? And so at the beginning of the year, we put out all of the gear that we have donated, and parents can just come and grab what they need. So a lot of families will get the things that they need that way. We require rain pants. A lot of people don't have rain pants. That's like the one thing that people are like, where in the world? So we point them in the right direction, but there's a lot of, you'll find like lists of like recommended gear, but I don't think anybody, I don't know, brands don't matter to me. It's like, just buy colorful stuff, because if everybody has black snow pants and black rain pants, you're going to lose them. And this is where, when you talk about the time that it takes to get outside, the gear, I swear, the gear is the place that takes the longest time, is to gear up. So if they buy ugly rain pants, ugly snow pants, ridiculous looking gloves, they'll be able to identify and put them on and get outside. I will say gearing up takes a long time in the beginning, especially with the younger kids, because there's a certain order, right? You can't put your snow boots on and then your snow pants. You got to put the pants on and then the boots. They figure it out over time and it gets faster. But also what we do is we pair up the big kids with the little kids, and the big kids help the little kids go through it, because when we've got 30 kids in the hallway trying to put on gear, it's a madhouse. So we do that together. And the same thing with gearing down. But they do learn how to, with the order of things, they learn how to zip up their coats. They learn a bit of gear independence, is what we call it, over time. But it does take time, and it takes patience on the part of the staff, and then to locate lost gear and all of that. So that does take time. There's just no way around it. This is our hallway this year. We've got our dots for COVID, but you can see the cubbies are in the hallway. So the kids come in, grab whatever stuff they need out of their cubbies, gear up in whatever space is available, and then they head out that door at the end of the hall. And then it's kind of hard to see here, but so it leads right out to a parking lot though, right? So that's a little bit dangerous. So we have these cones, which it would be nice if we have like a permanent solution here, but for now, this is what it is. And that leads them out to the field. And this is where our grass room, we call them grass rooms instead of classrooms. Out in the field, you can see, oh, and I should say yesterday was costume day. So if you see funny costumes on the part of the staff, that's why. So you can see we use stumps out here, and one of our staff has hung up, well, here, I'll start with the stumps. So some kids like to use the stumps, some kids like to use lap desks, some kids don't like to use anything at all, but This particular class has these little bath mats that they use that they move around to sit on. And so right when I was taking these pictures, they were back here in what we call the story forest. It's basically a bunch of invasive honeysuckle, but they don't know that. But they sit back there and they have their story times, and you can see Michelle, their teacher, is dressed like a bee, and she's reading them a story, and they're also in costume. But you know, she put together this little numbers and letters thing that she hangs out because this is a kindergarten class. But they kind of tuck in back there on their mats, and then when they come back out to their stumps, they'll bring them with them. The kids have a lot of stuff to carry this year. They don't normally, but this year we asked everyone to buy a yoga mat and a cinch bag. So they all have their individual supplies in their cinch bags that they carry around with them, in addition to the stuff in their backpack, which is usually like lunch and, well, gear. This is the other, so that's a zombie donkey named Anne. She's teaching. And this is a zombie dragon. Bethany is also teaching. So these kids, you can see their yoga mats that they're sitting on. And I know what the other thing about, this is both in the same field, right? So this is the same space. They're very close together. I'll be honest, the noise is a lot sometimes when they're teaching academics outside. Playtimes are easy, but academics is harder. There's cars driving by, there's ambulances, there's hawks, there's crows. You know, there's actually another preschool on the other side of our building. So these teachers are dealing with a lot of audio issues, I guess you could say. So I wanted to show you these two trees just as an example of how to use, I don't know, easy things that kind of come up to solve safety issues. So we have, as you can see on the left, this is the parking lot is right there on the edge of this little field that we use. And that we were always concerned that if a car hits the gas instead of the brake, that they're going to drive right into our grass room. So one of our parents who owns a tree business was dropping off some firewood, and he took this big tree out of the truck to get to the firewood. And I was like, well, what are you going to do with the tree? And he said, I don't know. I have to figure out where to put it. And I said, well, can you put it right here? And so he literally within 10 minutes just put it down, and then it was done. And now our security issue is fixed. So, you know, we had talked about planting trees, putting up more planters along this side, rocks, I don't know, any of those kind of things. So if you find yourself working in some kind of a crazy situation where we are, where you're in the middle of a parking lot, you know, there's still creative ways to make sure everybody is safe, because without this tree, the staff is very anxious, right? And a lot of what I do is calm down the teachers, make sure that they have the environment that they need to be able to teach. I can't fix the sirens and the hawks and the crows, but I could put a tree here, and now they don't have to worry about the cars, right? One less thing. So that helps. So this is one of our parking lot grass rooms, the one that was in the first picture, actually. These are our older kids. And you can see the teacher, she's really cold. It gets cold, it just does. And yeah, the staff just has to be willing to layer up and gear up like the kids do and be a good example. And our teachers do that, but man, yesterday was really cold. It was one of those days. But so in this picture, this is just a closer shot. You can see they have these little stools that are at IKEA for like $15. They use those as desks, some of them. Some of them bring camping chairs, some of them don't. But we use the yoga mats, which are 6 feet long, right, for social distancing purposes. They were just having breakfast in this picture. They weren't in class yet, so they just kind of are hanging around. And this is our second parking lot classroom, which actually this is in a breezeway. And these kiddos have moved around. They were under an oak tree, then they were under a magnolia tree, and then it got really muddy, and so they moved over to the breezeway, and they seem to like this space, so I think they're going to settle in here. But you can see, again, some kids use lap desks. They all have their cinch bags and their yoga mats, and we use the cones so that they can come out and set up their station when they get there in the morning. And you can see the teacher over here on the left in her witch's hat. We try to have a picnic table or something, some sort of table available in every outdoor classroom space. But the other thing that I wanted to show you, we found these carts, right? They have these double-decker outdoor camping collapsible carts. And so these are our mobile teaching stations. So the teachers load them up with whatever they need for that day. And we've figured out a way to attach whiteboards to the front. And at the bottom of the whiteboards, there's these little S hooks, and they just sort of hang on there and then use a bungee to hold the other side down. Because the wind is another factor that they have to constantly manage. Here's another shot of one of our other teachers. She's got her recycling bin on the side, some hand sanitizer in a pocket, that kind of thing. But these are off-road and they go everywhere, and they've been amazing. We need lots more of them. But they allow us to really take the classroom wherever the teachers want to take them. This is the front shot. So you can see kind of at the bottom where the S hooks are holding it on there. Everything is latched down because the wind will blow at any given moment. Oh, and then on the bottom down here, you can see we have a tent. It's like a little tarp. It's called a Big Agnes tarp that we can set up if they need shade or that sort of thing. We haven't needed that in a while, but those go along. And there's also, the other thing, there's a tarp in every cart, because if it's about to rain, the last thing you need is for everybody to panic and try to grab all their stuff and run inside. So instead, we just cover everything with a tarp. We cover the stuff, and then you can kind of get it in slowly. So every cart has a tarp. It's kind of there, you can see it on the bottom there. So this is actually, Maureen bought this for herself. She wanted me to show you. The red bin in the middle is for books that have already been read, and the green bin on the top is for books that are clean. So this is more COVID stuff, keeping materials separated. But she will wheel this around with her as long as she can get it to her classroom, for the kids to have a little library to choose from. So that's kind of generally what our logistics look like. I don't think there's any way to sort of sugarcoat the fact that it is difficult to get kids in and out of the building. But if you have a teacher who's willing, even one, who's willing to try, get a cart and a tarp and load it up and attach whatever they need, create the environment that they need, and just to try it out. But the gear is going to be a lot. The mud is going to be a lot. But if they're flexible enough to try, if you can get one person on board, we find that we have way less, you guys know this part, we have way less behavioral issues. We don't have to manage, we don't have to use classroom management techniques nearly as much. If they start outside, that's less time where they have to leave class, gear up, gear back down. They show up in their gear, or they put it on when they get there, and they just spend the first hour outside. Whether that's academics or play, doesn't matter really. But that way you only have to manage the time it takes to get everybody inside and take their gear off. And so, we have found that if they have that time, and that time is sort of sacred here, that we're able to teach them academics a lot more easily, and they absorb it a lot more easily. And sometimes if Michelle's going to read a book, she'll just pick it up and take it outside. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be science. It doesn't have to be a lesson about nature. We teach Japanese outside all the time. It can be anything. It can just be a nice day and you want to take the class outside. What was the other thing? Oh, we have outdoor hand washing stations. They're just little sinks that we found that somebody donated, and it just makes it easier to clean up before the kids head inside. What else? I feel like I should just answer questions and stop talking at this point.
Yeah, what kind of questions do people have? Thank you for that overview, Cheryl. That's great.
I feel like I just hit you with a lot of things. I can answer questions via chat, or if you guys want to unmute yourself, there's only a few of us anyway.
I'm curious about when it gets really cold, because to ask a kid to sit on the ground for an hour, even if you're geared up, that's kind of extreme. So what's your plan?
Yeah, well, I'm not using the word plan this year, or decision. Yeah, sitting on the ground is too much, in a parking lot especially. But also their fingers, they won't have that dexterity to be able to read a book or turn a page or use a pencil if they've got ski gloves on. I don't know, we're trying to figure things out still. Really, we'll probably move inside for academics. You can't do academics the same way in the winter. It has to be whole body movement. So, you know, what we're going to try and do at this point, if we're going to be able to be outside, is to plan the lessons in such a way that some of them can be outside still, and then some are just going to have to be inside. You know, math is easy enough. You've got manipulatives. We did a geometry lesson down at the creek, looking for the angles and measuring the, you know, the degree of the angles and things like that in nature. You know, counting patterns, things like that are easy in nature, but language arts sometimes is a little more difficult if you're teaching grammatical things and those kind of things, but you can read a book outside, you know, those kind of things. So yeah, winter, it's not going to be sit down academics outside. Those things are going to have to move inside, I think. There are people that are like building tents and putting things inside, but like you can't put an open fire in a tent. And the restaurant patio heaters, the heat's too high, and the propane blowers just take, or the electric blower, anyway, they take a ton of electricity and propane. And so like the resources to provide that heat is still too much of a hurdle for us. I've heard people using clay ovens. You know, we might try that, but you know, ultimately the staff gets cold before the kids do also. So, you know, that's kind of the first thing. If they're cold, then it's not going to work. So trying to troubleshoot that. I mean, there's hot water bottles that people use in Japan and things like that. But ultimately, those lessons, some of them are just going to have to be inside. And any other year, that's not a big deal for us. We do academics inside, and we just allow and encourage our staff to take them outside at any and every opportunity. We participate, and this is one thing that I always try to encourage the public schools here to do, is to participate in Outdoor Classroom Day. It happens twice a year. So it's just one day. And it's like, if you can just convince people to do one day, just try it. It doesn't even need to be the whole day, just for like half hour, take them outside. Although I would suggest an hour, because neurologically, they're gonna be still wound up after half an hour. You gotta give them an hour. Little tip, we found that to be very, very true. But anyway, to take them outside for an hour on Outdoor Classroom Day, although this year is a little bit different, but they do it in November, and then they do it again, I don't remember, in the spring sometime. But you can Google Outdoor Classroom Day. Also, they have a ton of resources trying to get school kids outside in public schools all over the world. And people participate in big numbers, and we love, thank you, Darcy, we love being a part of that. And it's an easy way, it's an easy reminder for our staff, oh yeah, we're trying to do this as much as possible. But that day is always set aside for that, to participate in that. And I think having, as far as convincing, you know, teachers and other staff to try it, having one person on board that can try to help convince the others, or at least just take them out with them one time, you know, just come with us one time and see what it's like. And the learning is so much more natural and easy and fun, that if you can figure out the logistical aspects of it, that, you know, even little bits and pieces are helpful. Sorry, my walkie is going off.
We had a question, Cheryl, about whether you were able to purchase the new equipment with school funds or if you sought outside funding.
Yeah, we use school funds. We were trying to look for outside funding as well, but we found that the companies the companies we normally go to for donations of outside stuff this year are like, no, because they're being inundated by people asking them for donations. And so we found that to be difficult this year, ironically, the year that we needed it most. So we spent less money on our regular classroom supplies and more money on the carts and the tarps and the other things. But our community is really great, and it's really easy to find a group of parents who are really behind the idea of getting outside, COVID or not. and they will procure things, we'll say. Those cones were donated. They were donated, and I don't know where they came from, but they were donated by families, and the tarps were donated, and 2 of our families bought big Agnes's for us. I don't know, so gathering the families who are interested and asking them to help with resources was really helpful. But yeah, being a private school, we don't have access to a lot of funds and grants and things like that. We just don't. And we're tuition based. So we have a true nonprofit budget. So we just kind of make do. Like our family with the tree business, you know, that's really helpful for us. A lot of times we get mulch from them. They just drop it off and we spread it out. So you kind of make do with the families that you have, and every year we have different families who can contribute different things, and we ask them for volunteer hours every year. And sometimes that looks like resources, and sometimes it looks like building things or time or things like that. So yeah, but we haven't had any outside funding. I sure wish I could say we did. The carts are only like $200. And I think the tarps, the big Agnes tarps, the fancy ones, are also about $200. So it wasn't too much, but those carts, I'm telling you, that worked out really, really well. And I just bought a ton of whiteboards off of Buy Sell Trade and kind of went with it.
Yeah, it was interesting to see your cart system. It seems like compared to the other 2 presenters we just had, you were going for a much more whole classroom outside experience. I think everyone else was kind of just working with a sit-upon and maybe a backpack.
Yeah, and our staff, they do have well, a couple of them have started wearing backpacks to carry their own supplies, but for this year, yeah, we're trying to be, sorry, I'm like on the clock at the same time. We're trying to be outside and as mobile as we can. And we have a creek down the street. And so if we're ever, somebody had said earlier that it took 20 minutes to walk somewhere. That's about how much time it takes us to get down to the ravine in the creek. So that's always a bigger planned thing. And we make sure we have enough staff because if somebody needs to go to the bathroom, you got to come back. So yeah, but we do try to stay out because it's easier to just be outside than it is to be in and out and in and out and in and out. So it has made it easier for us to just get everything we need for the day and be out.
And do you have just one teacher with the students all day, so you have some flexibility with your timing and schedule?
Yeah, the same group stays with the same teacher all day, although we have 2 teachers that teach, one is art and one is Japanese, and they kind of pop into each class, and that gives that teacher a break also. And then I pop in. So like as soon as I'm done here, I have to go tag somebody out so they can have a prep. So yeah, we kind of have extra staff, to make sure that they get the preps that they get. That because I know normally in a public school they would have much quieter times where they can sit down and plan, and our days just don't tend to be like that, but we try. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm happy to answer. Actually, I'll put my email address in the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards that come up. I always try to help other schools get going or get outside, whatever the case may be. And there's also a school called Solid Ground that's down in Southeast Ohio. I don't know if you know about that school. One of their parents was one of the parents that helped us start our school. So it's kind of a nice connection that they see.
Great. Yeah, Solid Ground is another nature-based school just outside Athens in Millfield, and they are actually doing an in-person session I forget which Saturday in November. It's limited to 8 people, all outside with masks. So if you want to get a tour of the school and learn a little more about their approach, I think they're talking about how they are able to do outside things across the curriculum. I would encourage people to sign up.
Yeah, I was so happy to hear that that school was starting. We have company. There's not a whole lot of us operating.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Cheryl. It's great to get to know a little more about you and Red Oak up there in Columbus.
Yeah. Well, it was nice to hop in quickly and then hop back out again. Yeah, just let me know if anybody has any other questions and I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah.
All right.
So thank you. Bye, Cheryl. And everyone else, we have more sessions all month. So check out our website. And if anyone needs graduate credit, get in contact with us and we can set you up with the forms and things you need to get that credit. Thanks, everyone.